were gentlemen. They weren't. They were nice men, but they were hardcore. They were hardworking men. Sam Elliott's deep, gravelly voice has defined generations. Powerful, grounded, unmistakably Western. But behind the mustache, the cowboy hats, and that stoic swagger lies something few have ever seen. A quiet anger that's been burning for decades. Across his 60-year career, Sam has earned respect from fans and filmmakers alike. But there are 6 names he's never forgiven. Actors who, in his eyes, betrayed the craft, crossed him personally, or played a game of silent disrespect behind his back. For years he stayed silent. Now at 80 he's done holding it in. And when you hear who made his blacklist, you'll never look at them the same way again. The first name, the one that made Sam walk off set and never return, was Kevin Costner, the cowboy he just couldn't stand. Authenticity has always been Sam Elliott's creed. Every line he's spoken, every role he's played has come from a place of truth. Sam didn't play a cowboy. He was one. Raised on ranches, molded by dust, discipline, and the unforgiving rhythm of the West. He brought something to the screen that couldn't be faked. You could hear the leather in his voice. You could see the years carved into his eyes. People believed him because he was the real thing. So when Sam saw Kevin Costner cast as a cowboy in Wyatt Earp and later as the rugged ranch patriarch in Yellowstone, he wasn't impressed. To him, Costner was Hollywood's version of a cowboy. Polished boots, perfect lighting, and lines delivered like they came from a script, not a soul. He plays a rancher like it's dress up, Sam once told a friend. Like he's pretending to be something he doesn't understand. While audiences praised Yellowstone for its sweeping cinematography, tense drama, and Costner's gravel voice gravitas, Sam Elliott just rolled his eyes and walked away. Sam didn't see the West he knew reflected on the screen. What he saw in Yellowstone was a polished fantasy, a version of the frontier made for people who had never driven a post into hard soil, never woken to the scent of cattle and dust at sunrise. To him, it was the West through a postcard lens, filtered, romanticized, and far too clean. Insiders later revealed that Sam was even offered a cameo in the series, but he turned it down immediately. His words were curt, his tone final. It's a soap opera in a cowboy hat. But that refusal wasn't just about the script. It was a statement, a quiet, deliberate rejection of what Yellowstone represented. To Sam, Westerns weren't simply entertainment. They were a code of honor, a reflection of values. Grit, integrity, silence that carried more weight than speeches ever could. The West wasn't supposed to sparkle. It was supposed to mean something. In his eyes, Costner's version of it was all polish and production. Beauty without backbone, style without soul. Even when the two men found themselves in the same room, the air turned cold. One producer later recalled, "They never shouted, but the silence between them could freeze a desert. And that tension was only the beginning. Then came the power of the dog." In 2021, Sam Elliott stunned Hollywood when he tore into the critically acclaimed film and its star, Benedict Cumberbatch. There was no soft phrasing, no polite restraint. His words were sharp, unfiltered, and hit like a gunshot in a quiet saloon. Sudden, echoing, and impossible to ignore. For Sam, it wasn't just about the movie's pacing or artistic choices. It was about something deeper. To him, Benedict Cumberbatch, refined, British, and meticulously mannered, had no place in the world of the American West. And Sam made sure everyone knew it. On Mark Maron's WTF podcast, he didn't hold back, not even a little. He called the film a piece of shit, mocked the cowboys running around in chaps with no shirts, comparing them to Chippendales dancers. "Where's the Western in this Western?" he demanded. Cumberbatch never got out of his fucking chaps. He had two pairs, a woolly one and a leather one. Every time he'd walk in from somewhere, he'd storm up the stairs, lay in his bed in his chaps, and play his banjo. What the fuck? He questioned the allusions to homosexuality throughout the movie, and even took aim at director Jane Campion for filming in New Zealand and calling it Montana. "That fucking rubbed me the wrong way," he said. For Sam, this wasn't just critique. It was betrayal of the genre he had spent a lifetime defending. The American West, in his view, demanded authenticity from those who dared to portray it. A British actor in Chaps, playing a repressed rancher with subtext Sam found over the line, felt like an invasion. The backlash was swift. Campion called him a little bit sexist and worse. Elliot later apologized publicly, saying he felt terrible for hurting people, particularly Cumberbatch, whom he called a brilliant actor. But those who know him say the apology was damage control. The anger never fully cooled. It was the principle that burned. Hollywood diluting the West with outsiders who didn't live it. These two clashes, Costner and Cumberbatch, set the tone for the rest of the blacklist. The third name? A rising star from a modern Western reboot who, according to set whispers, treated the old guard like props. Sam reportedly walked off a table red after the actor ad-libbed lines that mocked classic cowboy tropes. He thought it was clever. An insider shared. Sam thought it was disrespectful to the men who actually lived it. Fourth on the list, a celebrated method actor known for intensity, but who Sam felt faked the grit without earning it. They shared a film set once. Sam later told friends the man talked a big game about suffering for the role, but couldn't handle a real day's work in the dust. Fifth, a director-turned-actor who pushed for edgy takes on westerns, more violence, less honor. Sam clashed openly, calling it cartoon machismo that cheapened the legacy. And the sixth, perhaps the most personal, a longtime peer who, in Sam's eyes, sold out for fame, trading authentic roles for blockbuster paychecks. The betrayal stung deepest because they once rode side by side on real ranches. At 80, Sam Elliott isn't yelling from rooftops. He's simply done pretending. His voice, that legendary rumble, carries the weight of decades in the saddle. He doesn't need to name every name publicly. The industry knows. The quiet anger has simmered long enough. In a town built on facades, Sam Elliott remains the real thing. And for those who crossed the line of authenticity, forgiveness isn't on the menu. The West may have changed, but Sam's code hasn't. And when the dust settles, his blacklist stands as a reminder. Some lines you don't cross. Not if you want to look a real cowboy in the eye. He mocked Benedict Cumberbatch's accent, his stance, even what he called a dainty version of a rancher. It wasn't the kind of criticism you smooth over on a press tour. It was the kind that leaves a mark. What the hell does this Brit know about the American West? Sam scoffed during a podcast appearance. His voice laced with equal parts irritation and disbelief. The backlash came fast and fierce. Fans of Cumberbatch and supporters of the power of the dog rallied in defense. Social media ignited overnight. Critics labeled Sam a relic of a bygone age, a man too rooted in the past to embrace the genre's evolution. They said he was gatekeeping, clinging to a dusty image of masculinity that no longer fit modern storytelling. But Sam didn't flinch. He didn't apologize, at least not right away. He simply stayed his ground, solid and unmoving, the same way a cowboy might stare down a storm rolling in across the plains. To him, the power of the dog hadn't just missed the point. It had disrespected everything Westerns stood for. Sam believed the film glamorized fragility, twisted strength into dysfunction, and turned the moral backbone of the West into a psychological study stripped of honor. This wasn't about one actor or one film. For Sam Elliott, it was about defending a legacy. A tradition built on silence that spoke louder than words, on scars that carried stories, on men who didn't have to explain themselves. Cumberbatch never responded publicly. Insiders say he was quietly hurt, blindsided by the intensity of Sam's words. Behind the scenes, studio executives debated issuing a polite rebuttal, maybe a measured statement to ease the tension. But in the end, Benedict chose silence over spectacle. Sam, on the other hand, didn't move an inch. He stood by every word like a gunslinger who'd already taken his 10 paces and fired. To him, the West wasn't just a genre. It was a creed, a way of life that demanded honesty, grit, and reverence for what it truly meant to belong there. Sam Elliott wasn't about to let anyone, no matter how famous or acclaimed, rewrite the meaning of the craft he devoted his life to. And if his words about Benedict Cumberbatch caused a stir, what came next would shake Hollywood even harder. His next target, Ashton Kutcher, The man he believed had turned acting into an embarrassment. To Sam, acting was never about fame, likes, or marketability. It was sacred, a calling that demanded truth, patience, and discipline. Not charm, business savvy, or brand deals. Every performance, he believed, had to come from somewhere real, raw, and lived in. So when he watched Ashton Kutcher rocket to stardom through that '70s show, coast through glossy romantic comedies, and then reinvent himself as a Silicon Valley investor, Sam wasn't impressed. He was offended. It felt to him like watching someone treat the craft he revered as a hobby, a game, a platform for publicity instead of storytelling. Even so, when Netflix cast the two together in The Ranch, Sam didn't protest. He showed up, did his job, hit his marks, and carried the weight of professionalism he'd always prided himself on. But behind the camera, it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Crew members recalled the silence between them. Heavy, uneasy, almost electric. Sam never made a scene, but his frustration slipped through in quiet conversations. "He's a good guy," he was overheard saying to a grip one day, "but he's no actor." It wasn't Kutcher's personality that bothered him. It was his approach. To Sam, Ashton represented everything wrong with the new Hollywood. A world where algorithms replaced instincts, where social media metrics mattered more than craft, and where image took precedence over soul. What others called progress, Sam called decay. Insiders from the set whisper that Sam once walked off during a rehearsal after Ashton cracked a joke about going viral with a scene. "This ain't TikTok," Sam reportedly muttered under his breath. "This is supposed to be real." Kutcher, ever the charmer, tried to lighten the mood with laughs and backslaps, but Sam stayed stone-faced. Publicly, Ashton called Sam the best in interviews, praising his work ethic. But those close to Elliot say it was lip service. The tension simmered beneath the surface for all 4 seasons. The blacklist didn't stop there. Number 4, Bradley Cooper. Sam had crossed paths with him on a project years back, and what started as mutual respect soured fast. To Elliot, Cooper's method acting, intense, obsessive, always chasing awards, felt performative, like a man playing tortured artist instead of just being one. "He overthinks it," Sam confided to a friend. "The West doesn't need therapy sessions. It needs men who show up and do the work." 5th on the list, Nicolas Cage. The over-the-top energy, the wild choices, the eccentric persona. Everything Sam saw as chaotic excess. Cage's bombastic style clashed with Elliott's understated grit. Rumors from a shared festival panel say Sam once rolled his eyes so hard during Cage's rambling anecdote that the room noticed. "Acting ain't a circus," Sam later grumbled privately. "It's a craft." And the 6th, the most surprising, a young rising star from a blockbuster franchise who, in Sam's eyes, treated Western cameos like quick paychecks. No prep, no respect for the saddle, just showing up for the paycheck and the Instagram post. "Kids these days think cowboy hats come with filters," Sam reportedly said. The name stays whispered in industry circles, but the disrespect cut deep. At 80 or 81 now, depending on the headlines, Sam's quiet anger has finally boiled over. These aren't petty grudges. They're about a man who lived the life he portrayed, watching Hollywood dilute it with outsiders, influencers, and shortcuts. He never yelled in interviews, never posted rants. He just let the silence speak, until it couldn't anymore. The industry knows the list. The fans are divided. Some call him a gatekeeper dinosaur, others a last bastion of authenticity. But Sam Elliott doesn't care. He's still the same cowboy who rides his own trail. And for the 6 who made his blacklist, forgiveness might come someday. But respect, that's earned in the dust, not bought with likes. In a town full of facades, Sam remains the real thing. And when the credits roll on his career, his voice, that gravel rumble, will echo louder than any feud. To him, this wasn't evolution. It was erosion. The slow wearing away of something sacred. The art of storytelling he believed was being diluted, traded for marketability, watered down by shortcuts and shiny veneers. And while audiences saw chemistry between the two on screen, Sam knew the truth. It was just performance, Nothing deeper. Kutcher ever diplomatic. In interviews, praised Sam as a mentor, calling him a legend. But behind closed doors, Sam's view was far less flattering. He acts like a guy who learned acting from YouTube, he allegedly muttered to a friend. It wasn't bitterness, it was principle. Sam Elliott wasn't holding a grudge. He was holding the line, protecting a code that valued stillness over spectacle, substance over showmanship, truth over trend. In his eyes, Hollywood had traded authenticity for attention, and that, to him, was unforgivable. Sam Elliott wasn't about to let anyone, no matter how famous or acclaim, rewrite the meaning of the craft he devoted his life to. And if his words about Benedict Cumberbatch caused a stir, what came next would shake Hollywood even harder. Another name once shook his world: Nicolas Cage. Loud, erratic, excessive. For Sam Elliott, subtlety had always been the guiding compass. He believed that truly great acting didn't need to shout. Simmered. A raised eyebrow awaited. Silence, a single word carrying the burden of a lifetime. That was power. For Sam, the soul of performance lived in restraint, the kind of quiet strength that doesn't demand attention, but earns. So when Nicolas Cage stormed onto the scene with his explosive energy, wild gestures, bulging eyes, emotions bursting at every seam, Sam didn't see brilliance. He saw chaos. To him, Cage wasn't embodying a character. He was performing himself. A one-man circus, dazzling, noisy, and oxygen-draining. Even when they worked together on Ghost Rider, Sam kept his distance. Always polite, always respectful, but never warm. In later interviews, he never mentioned names, yet his words were sharp enough to point a finger. He spoke of actors who hijacked the screen with ego, turning every scene into a personal stage play, bigger, louder, but emptier. Those close to Sam didn't need to guess. They knew he was talking about Cage. To a trusted friend, Sam once confessed, "He's more firework than flame, bright, loud, and gone in a second." While Nicolas Cage built a cult following through unpredictability and manic energy, Sam Elliott stayed rooted in what he believed mattered most: control, depth, and a steady, enduring fire. Sam always believed that true power in acting came from drawing the audience closer, not pushing them away. To him, Nicolas Cage symbolized a troubling turn in modern cinema, a hunger for shock over story, spectacle over substance. What once was art had become performance, for performance's sake. And though Cage won awards and critics praised his brilliantly unhinged energy, Sam never bought into it. In his eyes, no golden statue could disguise emptiness. Because, for Sam Elliott, real acting was never about noise or virality. It was about truth, stillness, and the quiet humanity that makes a performance breathe. Those were the qualities he believed Nicolas Cage had long since left behind. Jeff Bridges, the friendship that went cold. There was a time when Sam Elliott and Jeff Bridges seemed carved from the same stone, rugged, grounded, soulful. Men who spoke volumes without saying much at all. They didn't need fireworks or monologues to command a room. They simply were. Their strength came from stillness, from that quiet magnetism only a handful of actors ever possess. When they shared the screen in The Big Lebowski, they were electric. Two sides of the same coin, perfectly balanced in rhythm and tone. Off-screen, their bond seemed just as genuine. They laughed together, traded stories, and built a friendship founded on respect and the shared belief that simplicity was its own kind of power. But over time, something shifted. Not suddenly, there was no fight, no falling out, just a slow, subtle distance that crept in without either man naming it. After Jeff Bridges won his Oscar for Crazy Heart. Sam began to notice the change. The man who once radiated humility, a quiet craftsman, content to let the work speak for itself, started showing up in glossy magazines, walking red carpets with political slogans, and making the rounds in carefully polished interviews. He became harder to reach. One person close to Sam said, less grounded, more curated. To Sam, it felt like the Jeff he knew, the one who valued truth over trend, was slipping away, replaced by the sheen of Hollywood's machine. The simplicity they'd once shared, that sacred belief in authenticity above all else, seemed to fade beneath the glare of fame. Wasn't jealousy, it was disappointment. Sam Elliott had built his life on the idea that integrity is the one thing a man can't afford to lose, and watching a friend drift from that ideal, that hurt in a way no critic or co-star ever could. In one of his rare interviews, when asked about former collaborators, Sam Elliott gave a short, almost cryptic reply, but the meaning was clear. Some folks change, he said quietly. Others just show who they always were. For many, that line wasn't just reflection. It was a message, a subtle, unspoken nod to Jeff Bridges. Jeff never responded, true to his calm, composed nature. But the silence between them spoke louder than any words. The two stopped appearing at the same festivals. They stopped supporting each other's work. The brotherhood that had once felt unshakable simply faded. For Sam, the loss wasn't about ego or competition. Wasn't jealousy over fame or politics. It was personal, deeply personal. The pain came not from betrayal, but from erosion. The slow, silent decay of a friendship built on shared values and mutual respect. What was once a bond between kindred spirits had turned into a memory wrapped in regret. Insiders said Sam felt abandoned, not because Jeff had wronged him, but because he had drifted into a world Sam no longer recognized, and that quiet ache, that sense of losing a brother, stayed with him. But even that heartbreak would pale in comparison to what came next, because the final name on Sam Elliott's list wasn't a rival or a friend. It was a symbol of everything he believed had gone wrong in Hollywood. That ache, deep and lingering as it was, couldn't compare to what came next, because the final name on Sam Elliott's unspoken blacklist wasn't just another actor. It was a test of everything he believed in. Jared Leto, the method gone mad. For Sam, Hollywood's biggest sin was never ambition or confidence. It was pretension, the kind of overblown seriousness that turns art into theater. For the actor's ego rather than a story. For the audience, acting to him wasn't supposed to scream for attention. It was supposed to disappear into truth. So, when Jared Leto began making headlines for his method madness, mailing dead rats to co-stars living in character for weeks, turning movie sets into endurance trials, Sam didn't see brilliance. He saw a stunt, a performance about performing. He wasn't impressed by the Oscar or the media frenzy that followed. He was irritated by the spectacle, the way it glorified excess over essence. That's not talent, Sam reportedly said once. That's theater pretending to be art. And when Sam said something like that, he meant every word. Behind closed doors, he was even blunter. If it takes that much effort for him to act, he told a friend, maybe he's in the wrong business. To Sam Elliott, true acting never needed shock value. It didn't need chaos or controversy. It was about stepping into a role with quiet discipline, humility, and respect, not turning the process into a carnival. Acting for him was sacred. It was about truth, not tricks. And in that belief, Sam stood firm, steady as ever, the last cowboy in a town that had long forgotten what real storytelling looks